I just picked up my my Scaventide box, so I have these faction or these battle tactic cards and the map cards in front of me, which is definitely worth all that money. I don't know why I bought it. Do you know why I bought it? So I could play. So I would have a spearhead map that I could play on. You know why I bought it? Because I'm a sucker. Anyway, let's talk about what going first actually means for greenskins. But first, thanks to all my patrons. If y'all are interested in supporting the channel, Patreon is a great way to do it. I'm very grateful, and I will also help you write lists and mess around in TTS and stuff. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to hit me up. Buy some dice. Thanks to Wyberian for making good art. Okay, so what does going first actually mean? So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't claim to have all the answers. This is just where I am in my thinking right now. So please let me know in the comments below if you agree, disagree, if there's something I've overlooked, if there's an error that I've made, or even better yet, join the Discord and at me or send me a DM. I can't do all this thinking without y'all. So if you're going first, in this game right now, I feel like the battle tactics are... So there's 6 universal battle tactics. And those universal battle tactics, in my head, I've split into 2 different kinds of categories. One of them is controlling space, and the other one is about fighting and killing. It's about actual combat. So the ones that are about taking space are seize the center, where you want to control the middle of the battlefield. Take their land, where you want to control terrain feature in... It's, I think what does it say here? Wholly outside friendly territory, and then either partially or wholly within enemy territory. And then take the flanks, which is you have to be not wholly within friendly territory. You have to be, you have to just tip your nose out of friendly territory, essentially. So if we were to look at a TTS map, and I were to take, let's just take good old Kragnos. So if I'm the blue player and I'm on this flank, I don't have to get wholly outside of friendly territory. All I have to do is tip my nose outside of the zone, right? And I have to be within 6, not wholly within, just within 6. So if I just move myself like this, all I have to do is move myself up about 9 inches and change. If I'm dead on the line, right? If I'm dead on the line, this is 9 inches. So if your unit moves faster than 9 inches, i.e. 10 inches, and you have one on each flank, this is relatively easy to do, right? You don't have to get outside your territory, you just have to toe out. And these maps that are split half and half with one piece of, with your territory, my territory on both half, these are the ones that are going to be the hardest to do. Because and it's not even that hard to do. But for example, if I were to find shifting objectives, right? This one I can be on my line like this, and so technically, all I have to do is move any amount of movement, be within 6 inches of the battlefield edge and just outside of my territory. And over here, what I have to do is I have to go, and I have to be within 6 of this battlefield edge. So this is not very hard at all, because if this distance between these 2 things is 15, right? Anything that moves 10 inches, right? Because I'm going to have to move 10 inches to get, or I'm going to have to move 9.1 inches. 9 is not enough, but 9.1 inches is going to get me within 6 of this battlefield edge. So on this map, you only need one guy who's fast, and the other guy you can just tow out. It's not tough to do this at all. You could do it with a unit of gut rippers or something. If you're heading over towards the objective, right? It's not even that tough. Here's a unit of Bard Boys because I was having trouble, right? Doesn't have to be wholly within, so these guys could march up, whatever, they could run, and then all you need to make sure is that you have one toe or whatever sticking out the backside. If you're a reinforced brick, something like this works just fine, right? So take their flanks is possible to do on turn 1. Take their land is going to be really, really challenging to do on turn 1. And seize the center, this might be the freebie for turn 1. Because I remember in 3rd edition, when I was learning the game, and I was learning about the, battle tactics and all this, and we were just using the battle tactics out of the core rulebook, that seize the center to me felt like it's actually kind of a disadvantage going first, right? Because you can be doubled, and you have to make your move, right? You have to like get closer to your opponent, and you have to take objectives. So to me, seize the center always felt like a battle tactic that was like, oh yeah, you have to go first, and that sucks. So here you go, 1, 2, 3. Oops. All right. Oh, there's only 3 there's only 3 maps this season that have an objective in the center. So this is something that's worth considering, right? There's only 3 maps that have an objective in the center. So if you're not claiming an objective in the center of the map, if you're just moving into the center of the map, you're gonna have to really think about that. Because if we take, for example, the map Border Wars, right? Border Wars has no objectives. Well, it has 4 objectives, but it has nothing in the center. So why take the middle if you don't have to? Maybe you'll be splitting up your forces on both sides. So that's very interesting. So seize the center is actually a little bit weaker than I thought, but still is a very easy, viable turn 1 battle tactic. Like, what else are you taking if you go first? You can take seize the center, you can take their flanks, but after that, it becomes really challenging. Because you're probably not going to have 3 units be wholly outside of friendly territory and fighting, right? You probably don't already have stuff in combat, so you know, when you sit down, if you're going first, and when you're writing your lists, if you're planning on going first, or if you're low drop or high drop, it doesn't matter. You have to have a plan of what you're going to do if you go first. It's either seize the center or take the flanks, right? Another interesting thing about going first is that you control the double, and by this I mean that you have the advantage on the die roll, right? But you do not... sorry. But you do not have... but you can be doubled. So if you're going first, you have the advantage on the roll, but your opponent can double you. And that is something that is, like, still, I think, a possibility and worth considering. It also means as the game progresses, whoever is going second, even if they win, they can still, like, not double. So they can sort of save that double opportunity till later in the game. Because don't forget, if your opponent tables you on turn 4, turn 5, well, they kind of score all the points from that point forward. So not scoring a tactic, if they can kind of remove you from the table, they're going to outscore you. So I think doubling is something that's going to come a lot later in the game, which I think is good. So going first means that you control that, but yeah, and the only way that you can get out of that, like take a double if you're going first, is by giving your opponent a double over you, and they still get to score their tactics. So that is actually something that is worth thinking about and considering, just because like if you're like a castle build or whatever, and you like move out on turn 1, and then your opponent goes and they're kind of waiting for you to do something, you can be like, okay, well, like I'm set up in a good position where I'm not concerned about scoring, and I have like decent battle map control, so you go. Like Gargans, I think would love stuff like that for sure. Oh, sorry, where's my Twitch chat? Sorry, you guys. Gotta bring up my Twitch chat. Can't forget about y'all. Also, I think another thing going first too is your opponent controls the underdog, right? That if your opponent wants to, if they're going second, they can just score low. They can just score like 1 or 2 fewer points than you or whatever, and they're like, okay, like I'm the underdog. And in some maps it doesn't really matter, but in other maps, like for example, the Jaws of Galette, what the underdog gets to do is remove one of these 5 objectives if they want to, which can be quite powerful, right? If you're the underdog, you're just like, oh, okay, like the objective that's in your territory, I'm going to scoop it. It's going to be gone. And if I'm in a really good position to control the board, well, I'm going to force you to come to me, or not score very well, right? So it's quite interesting if you're going first or if you're going second. If whoever's going second, certainly, like here's the map or whatever, right? It's like if you can remove one of these 5 objectives, it can feel pretty significant. So if you're going first, you don't control the underdog. You can be doubled, but I feel like you're in a better position for tactics moving forward with seize the center. You know, you're kind of you can sort of take their flanks, because if you're in a map that's split 50-50, right? Oops, sorry, that's deployment zone. If you're in a map that's split 50-50 and you move up just outside of your objective or outside of your territory, your opponent is going to have to either like, I mean, I guess they could like fight you and pile in or whatever, right? But it's like you're kind of in a position to block them. And the further that you move up, the more likely you are to deny. And same thing with take what's theirs, you know? If you're in an aggressive board position, it's going to be harder for your opponent to find ways to sneak around you. So, and also, and then for battle tactics, like going first could be significant for battle tactics too. If you are going first, it means that you have to take your turn. And if you're an army that likes to use a lot of command points on your turn, or if through some unlucky rolls you're forced to use command points on your turn. So a good example of this could be if you fail a charge roll, or if you're a really slow army and you often use run, if you, the run command, if you are an all-out attack hungry army like Ironjawz who hits on 4s and they really want to be using all attack every combat phase. The point that I'm trying to make is that the more points that you spend, command points that you spend on your turn, if you're going first, the fewer points you have on your opponent's turn to react and threaten certain things. So if I'm using 2 points on my turn, and then I'm using like a point to chant or cast in my opponent's turn in the first battle round, countercharge is now off the table. Countercharge is no longer a possibility, and my opponent knows this, and then they can play as if countercharge is not a possibility. Yeah, so that's meaningful, right? And if you're going second, well, we'll talk about that here in a sec. So if you're going second, so you get to hold up your redeploys, your countercharges, you get to like cast a spell in your opponent's turn before really all that much happens. So one thing that's actually kind of cool is taking like using the Hand of Gork, for example, and teleporting a unit really far forward into your opponent's face and being like, yeah, like here you go, like you haven't moved yet and you just used all your spells or whatever, but I've stuck like a reinforced unit of Ardboys right into the center of the map, and you haven't done anything yet. Right? But bam, there's my Ardboys. You already picked your battle tactic and you picked seize the center. Bam, denied. So armies that have like some like movement shenanigans like this, like Ironjawz or Cruel Boys or whatever, if you can move things around the map before your opponent has the chance, it can be really strong. So you got to keep that in mind. Sorry, I should be really swapping, but like, what are you gonna do if like, oh, I'm going second and I Hand of Gork teleported this off and you pick seize the center? Like you failed. Like, I denied your tactic, just like that. You pick seize the center, bam. So you have to be really careful about this when you're playing. Yeah. Yeah, but you declare charges, but part of the declare is rolling the dice. Right? So you roll the dice. Yeah, that's what there's no way that you have to like, there's no way that you have to like, but there's no way. There's no way that you have to be like, I'm going to spend a command point so that if I fail this charge, I'm going to re-roll it. There's no way. You know what? I'm going to pause my video just to look this up. Yeah, no, you can re-roll your charge roll after seeing the roll. Yeah, that's good. Because if that wasn't the case, that'd be bad. Anyway, so if you're going second, you get to hold up all your counterplay at the beginning. So your opponent, when they move at you, if you're going second, like countercharge is always an option. Casting and chanting in their turn is always an option. So to me, that feels like it's more advantageous. You're going to be able to like your opponent your opponent's going first. They picked their battle tactic, and now you can dedicate all of your resources to countering what they're doing, to trying to deny them their tactic. And then on your opponent's turn, like when it's your turn, your opponent, they either had to save their command points to do the same thing to you, but it's like more difficult for them. If you're going first, then you fail a charge, or if you need, you know, power through, or if you need all out attack, it just becomes harder. You have to save command points. If you're going first, you want to spend 1 command point or less. Probably is how it's going to feel. And as soon as you're using 2 command points or 3 command points, it's going to feel bad in the first battle round. This is, of course, if you're not 1950. If you're 1950 points and under, then you can kind of use like, you know, 2 because you have 5. All right, so maybe that'll kind of become a meta where like some armies really want to go first, and they really want to use 2 command points or 3 command points on their turn. Ironjawz might be a good example of this, where it's like maybe we want to auto run 6, maybe we want to use all out attack, maybe we want, you know, and so maybe going to 1950 is actually going to be a good choice. And if you're going second, you also control the underdog. You can just decide to be the underdog. And I said this already, but in some maps, it's really advantageous to be the underdog. I've gone through a few of them, but I haven't done like a full analysis of these yet. But there are some maps where the underdog is quite significant. So playing for the underdog is a legitimate strategy. On some maps. On some maps, it's like whatever. On most maps, I don't think that players are going to be purposefully trying to be the underdog in the vast majority of cases. But there are a few. Like I said, the Jaws of Glit, the underdog gets to... Like I have it right in front of me here. It says, at the end of their turn, after scoring, the underdog can pick 1 objective. The objective is removed from play. So they just get to start pulling, like, just forever. So they just get to start, like, pulling off objectives from the map. Seems relevant. As far as tactics go, we talked about this a little bit, but if you're going first, I think you're taking seize the center or take the flanks. You're taking one or the other. I don't really think that there's any others that we can take. Right? Time to get stuck in. 3 friendly units that are not in combat and wholly within friendly territory. They have to end wholly outside of friendly territory, and they all have to fight. 3 units have to leave wholly within friendly to wholly outside of friendly and fight. Some maps, like for example, shifting objectives, this is not going to be super difficult because to get wholly outside of your friendly territory is not going to be that difficult. Turn 1, this is still not super likely if you're going first, but if you're going second on turn 1, then time to get stuck in, I think, is way more viable. But most of the maps are split down the middle. There's only 4 maps that have like neutral territory, right? So not super great. Sorry, I'm not flipping back and forth here fast enough. Right, like on this map, it's going to be pretty easy to get from wholly within to wholly outside and use the fight ability with 3 units, especially if you're going second in the battle round. If you're going second, seize the center might be an option if your opponent neglected to put something within combat range of the center, right? Hello. But besides that, like, if you're going second, I think you have a few more options. So you can take a Do Not Waver. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if 2 or more friendly units fought this turn and no friendly units were destroyed this turn. So you just have to make sure that you pick a good fight, and this is going to be pretty easy to do early on in the game because everything's at full health, right? Like, throw some defensive buffs on there. Yep. Or you could also take attack on 2 fronts. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you control 2 or more objectives that you did not control at the start of your turn, and at least one of those objectives was controlled by your opponent. So it's like you have to take 2 objectives, and one of them you have to take from your opponent. So there's lots of maps where it's like this one would be quite difficult with these objectives on the map here. But there's going to be lots like stuff like this. It's like maybe during deployment. What is this? What are we on here? Oh yeah, this is the Jaws of Glit again. So if we're on the Jaws of Glit, it's like maybe you deploy off of this objective. Your opponent does seize the center, they take the middle, and then on your turn, all you have to do is take this objective. This is one objective that you didn't control at the start, and then you're gonna have to fight over the center, or you're gonna have to fight over another objective, right? Or you can just deploy off of this objective, and then at the start of your turn, you're like, boop, that's one, and then probably, hopefully, there's 3 objectives that your opponent controls, and you just have to take whatever the weakest one of those is. That's not... I'm not flipping back and forth fast enough again. Sorry. And then time to get stuck in. This is one of our this is one of the destruction ones. They have to start wholly within friendly territory and wholly outside of friendly territory, and all 3 of them have to do this, and they all have to use the fight ability. So time to get stuck in is going to be one that it's going to be like time to get stuck in 3rd edition, where you're going to be checking to see if this is possible. If it is, hooray. If it's not, oh well. And then I wanted to just mention briefly something that Leonard and I were talking about earlier that he brought up to me, which is this idea that I've named the Brawl. So if you are going first and you know that your opponent is going to be controlling the double, you're faced with this interesting choice. And this, of course, is only true on maps where being the underdog matters a lot, like on the Jaws of Galette, for example. It might matter a lot who is the underdog, depending on your army, depending on your opponent's army, depending on all kinds of things. So it's a weird strategy. So if you're going first and you score 10 points, your opponent can always just underscore you by 2 points, right? And then they're the underdog and they get to choose. So you, as the player who's going first, can sort of decide to score fewer points. But if you decide to score fewer points, your opponent can always just go under you and still be the underdog. So if you're going first, there's this weird thing that you can do where you decide you score 0 points. You take no objectives, you score no battle tactics, and you control 0 points. And your opponent on the other end of the table will A, probably be surprised, and B, look at you and be like, well, what do I do? Your opponent is then in a position where they can either also score 0, denying you the ability to be the underdog and keeping the game on even ground, or they can try to score all their points and score 10 points. And considering you control no objectives, it's probably going to be very easy. But then, now you are the underdog. And now you get to choose. So you have to make this choice if you're going first and underdog matters. Am I going to score points, or am I going to, like, try to lure my opponent into a brawl? So a brawl is when both players have decided to score 0 points. You're now in a brawl. It's going to be just who gets to fight, right? JFK Space Race says, don't sandbag like that at a tournament. It's not about sandbagging. I think it's a legitimate strategy. And what do you mean by sandbag? Do you mean, because when I think of sandbag, yeah. And so the idea is that you're going to score 0 on your first turn, but the underdog is so powerful that you're able to, like, swing it back at the end of the game by denying. You'll score overall less tournament points. That's true. You will score overall fewer tournament points because you are scoring 0 tactics. And it's quite risky, but I think it's something fun to do. Maybe not, like, at a tournament, but maybe in, like, a league game, or maybe in a game that's just for fun. It's like, hey, come on over, play Jaws of Galette with me. And then you throw it at your opponent. So, yeah. So Leonard says that it's optimal to score 6 points, not 0, right? Do a battle tactic, stand on 1 objective. Yeah, but then your opponent can just score 4. Right? But I guess you're hedging that thing. But anyway, I just thought it was a cool idea, and I just wanted to kind of share it with everybody. But yeah, like, let me know what you're thinking about battle tactics, going first, going second. Like, what army are you playing? What are you doing with it? Please let me know. Like, subscribe. Wah.